Well, I'm doing wonderful. I'm quite literally sitting up in bed right now. I don't think I can be in any better of a place for a podcast. I can't complain at all. Also, are we
Yeah.
muted, Paul?
No, well, you weren't muted. I was muted. I'll start over again. I'll add to it. Welcome back to Collegiate Exclusive. Had a week off last week. I was sick, and I also almost got scammed over the weekend. Like I was this close to losing my Discord and like Chrome username and password, so I had to reset my PC. And so that's why there was no audio there. That's a whole story that we don't have time to get into. But don't ever download stuff from Discord, even if you trust the person that you think you're talking to. But yeah, now we should have audio, and yeah, TJ, they could hear you the whole time. So your intro was done well.
Okay, well, I am doing good, so I'm glad the chat can hear you now. Also, Somber mentioned the Falcons signing Tua Tagovailoa. I know this is not a sports podcast, but forgive me, indulge me for 10 seconds. I
Sure.
hate being an Atlanta sports fan. It has been a miserable week for Atlanta sports. So at least I have Atlanta Rocket League and Georgia Rocket League, because we actually had two teams at LAN this past weekend, and that did a pretty good dang job. So on that note, I got something to look forward to today.
Yeah, at least you got Jonathan Kaminga as well. He's been fun to watch for the
Love him.
Hawks.
The GOAT.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the Atlanta sports bias. I'll pull for Chicago. That's my main city when it comes to sports. But like, I grew up in Kennesaw. I'll pull for the Falcons and the Hawks. So it hurts, but not quite as bad as what you feel. I'm sure I have the benefit of being able to shove them off as my second teams.
Well, we're going to glaze over Magic City night as well. We're not even going to bring that up. Not going to even bother with that. I think we should talk about league play and
All
we should
right.
settle into this
Let's
podcast.
let's talk about league play then. So we're gonna start actually with qualifier 2. We did miss talking about that by not having a podcast last week. So we're not gonna do as in depth a dive in as we did for qual 1. That took a long time. But let's quickly go through the 4 groups for qual 2, because this is what finished league play up and filled it up. I mean. We've got here in Pool 1, Baylor were the #1 overall seed in this pool, and I think that's completely deserved despite their lackluster high ping performance in Qual 1. I'm glad that the seeding committee actually recognized that as a fact and had them as seed 1, because there was some screwy seeding in this qualifier that I don't think we've even got time to dive into really. But big stories from this one. Baylor gets out, but Penn State looked really good, TJ. I mean, they beat George Mason, they beat Winthrop Academy, they take a game off of Baylor, and then in the lower bracket as well, they are a game away from qualifying to league play.
I mean, on paper, they're the team with the ranks that you would compare to like a Columbia or an LCU potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But the issue with the way that these quals are so spread out is like, don't get me wrong, Penn State, like they made my top 48. We're going to talk about that later this show. But also they played George Mason. Okay, great win. They get a game off of Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
Impressive. You beat James Madison, St. Clair Gold. I'm not putting a ton of stock into those games, but the game 5 against Syracuse, I do put a lot of stock into that because Syracuse, I think, has been looking for a signature win. And for them to come into the loser side of Qual 2, they come all the way down. They reverse swept
Yeah.
Penn State in that series. I think that was the biggest story that even overshadowed Penn State's glorious run in this pool. So I did put Penn State in the top 48. Don't get me wrong, they deserve that. But I don't know if they're going to be in a conversation consistent enough because what do they play in, right? When are we going to get to see them? We'll see them in the Opens. I don't know if we're going to see them outside of that.
Yeah, Penn State's one of those weird teams that will have a good performance in an open, but in a qualifier or an open. But I don't know if they'll do too much damage outside of that. I like the mental side of things for them still seems to be their biggest crux. And I mean, being reverse swept by Syracuse. Yeah, Syracuse had to warm into the series, having to wait for an hour or two just by way of the massive bracket. But apparently, Penn State were talking some smack as well before that series is over. I don't know if you saw Tiz's reply, TJ. In discussing this series, but there were some words exchanged before the series was over, and Syracuse ended up coming back and reverse sweeping them.
Well, I mean, again, that's a statement and a signature win in itself, on top of the trash talk. And also, like, I personally am actually a fan of Nitrous, unpopular opinion. I think he's hilarious. But trash talking type gameplay. Like he and Melodic have a very similar style on how they go about the game
Yeah.
and how they seem to talk in games. So I like the trash talk, don't get me wrong, but it also sucks when you can't back it up, and especially when you get reverse swept. So I'm rooting for them. I'm not going to read too much into it. I think it's all fun and games as long as nobody gets personal. So be it. Good for them. Had a good run. I'm excited to see them in the opens.
All right. Well, any other real storylines from this? Like George Mason had a rough run. They lost to St. Clair Gold and then Penn State in uppers. They did beat Mount Aloysius. It's a decent win, but like for George Mason and the talent on that roster, that is kind of a rough run.
Yeah, and I was also going to throw Maryland into the conversation as well. And from what I've heard, Mount Aloysius has actually been on a really good run. Like they've had some really good series. I talked a lot with the WCTC crew at Tri-Cities. They talked really glowingly about this roster.
And about them on my stream a couple weeks ago. Like Mount Aloysius destroyed WCTC.
And that was what WCTC basically credited as kind of their big tune-up, was that loss. So they talked glowingly about this team. And on paper, Locke is a very unknown but also a very talented member of this roster. So, I think, again, it's growing pains for this roster, actually getting another third they can reliably depend on. Skippy is still fairly new. So I'm going to kind of hold off on this roster. Again, they made my top 48, I believe.
Yeah.
But again, this is a team that we're going to talk about them as open contenders. Maybe not confidently in the top 4 of that. I think they have the potential to, but we're going to be looking at them in the top 12 of the opens, I believe. But those are going to be the moments they got to push through.
Okay, I can see top 12 for sure. Oh, of course. They pop in right to hear that.
They're in the entire top 48. I will tell you where you guys specifically are later on in the show. I'm talking about the entire top 48.
Yeah, you got to stick around to see where TJ ended up putting you. But yeah, still overall fairly normal pool, I think, with all things considered. Maryland losing to James Madison, I'm actually not too surprised about that. Maryland have been extremely inconsistent this semester. I don't know why that is. I was talking about that during the BEC Collegiate Invitational this past weekend, where they lost to Wisconsin in bracket play and then made a run through lowers and then got dismantled by Michigan State. And I just don't understand Maryland this semester, because they've got LAN experience, they've got plenty of time playing as a roster, but they just haven't hit a lot of their peaks, and it feels like they're hitting their floors at the same amount they're hitting their ceiling. They're a really weird team this semester.
You could say that about anybody from 25 down. I mean, until we are talking about these rosters that are consistently rank X, rank X, rank A, or rank X, rank S, rank, like with these rosters that are still mixed with maybe one rank X and then miscellaneous players under them, even if it's 1X and 2A, there's bound to be inconsistencies. And even teams like Syracuse, who technically have a brand new rank X in Gababy, but I still, in my mind, that's a team that is not exactly in the same echelon as a Mount Aloysius, but yet they have wins better than Mount Aloysius right now. So all those rosters from 50 up to 25, they're all a mix, but that's what the opens are for.
And that's why we get such entertaining results. I was really devastated I didn't get to stream this open qualifier number 2, because we had an absolutely insane day of results. I was like sitting on my couch just dying, coughing, and seeing these results pour in. But Davenport ended up qualifying for league play through uppers. I don't think either of us expected this in a pool with the likes of an Akron Blue, who should be in league play, a Boise State, you could argue the same, and a Leslie team that had already beaten Davenport in the last week leading up to this qualifier. They end up beating Indiana, Boise State 3-0, and they beat Akron in game 5 to end up making it. And so Davenport are in league play in a pretty stacked bracket here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for Davenport. I mean, they are a team that, again, on paper, they should be a lock for the top 16, but as we kind of go through the regular season, they struggle. In my opinion, I think it's with the amount of scrims and the amount of hours they put in. I don't believe they've been as committed to the game as players at that level should be. But obviously something changed in the last few weeks, because to get Huge wins. Again, a sweep over Boise State would have never predicted that.
Yeah.
You can argue a close series. I can't even believe a sweep was on the table. And then not to mention they go up 2-1 on Akron Blue and they close that one out in 5. That is a huge, huge win. But I think it also does speak to where Akron currently stands as a team. Both with the blue and gold roster moves where they swap players. Even going to LANs, like 5UP has not been attending really any trips with the team to any of these LANs. So I wonder if there's any sort of maybe chemistry issues that Akron are still trying to outgrow. But I think one of the biggest losses of this entire qualifier, not just this pool, this entire qualifier, is the fact that Boise State did not make it, and they were 1 game away.
I'm with you there. That's the product of this being such a stacked qualifier bracket. Boise State was the odd team out here, and I mean there were other teams that all like were in touching distance as well. Like Leslie, we knew were going to be within striking distance of a spot here, but you also have like Lubbock Christian, who with the talent that they've got on their team, you would expect to be given a fighting chance in a bracket like this, but they fall well short, and that's continued from the fall semester. But Daytona State, let's talk about those boys. They lose to Boise State, but place top 4 in their group, which is a massive run for them. And look at the run that they have to go through in Lowe's. Let's find their upper bracket loss here, because it came early on. By way of seeding, by the way, this is one of the screwy seeding things. I don't know why on earth Daytona State is seed number 17 in this pool. That makes no sense to me. Seeded below CSUN, like that's absurd. And I don't know what the seeding committee's doing, not paying attention to Daytona State leading up to this qualifier, but whatever. So they play Akron Blue and they lose to them. And then they run through Fisher White, then Kaiser, then Indiana, okay, whatever. Then they start beating Lubbock Christian and Leslie and taking a game off of Boise State. Daytona State, that's a scary team.
Absurdly impressive out of Daytona State, and the rankings definitely will reflect that when we talk about that team in a little bit. I mean, they were a team who we both had pretty consistently, I think, in the 40 to 48 range, depending on their NECC results. With that, I mean, obviously they might not jump over some of the consistent contenders that we talk about, but they deserve to be talked about in a positive light. They also had a really good showing on LAN against Oklahoma Christian. They were up, I believe, 2-1 against that team in losers bracket, 1 game away from knocking them out. Unfortunately, couldn't complete it, and I don't like to talk about losses in a positive light, but regardless, this team is the real deal, and they are going to be really, really scary dark horses, I should say, in the opens. But I just, again, like I'm with you on the seating. That's why I'm tripping over my words, because I'm trying to figure out how I want to say it. Me and you talked about this even, I believe, a few days after this finished up.
Yeah.
And all that I'm going to say is that your favorite 2 white boys are not on the CRL seating committee. So we don't have any say over these teams. And I think that's really unfortunate that maybe not even Bepic, who creates spreadsheets in his spare time, can get on the seating committee. Because I also think that we're the only people who focus on these teams who are around the top 30 or the bottom side of maybe 35, 40 and under. I think we're the only people who follow these teams. And so the fact that they got destroyed by the seeding, I don't know, even on paper, if you compare tracker links, I don't understand why CSUN is over them, not to mention some of the other teams they had to go through. But who am I to judge? I'm not in the committee. That's all I'm going to add to it.
Like we're talking about Kaiser being seated above them. George Mason B was seated above them, and you just don't know. Like you just don't know that this team exists and is in Division 2 of the NECC and is beating teams like Florida. Like I think they beat Florida Southern as well on my stream. I don't know. That's for the seating committee to figure their issues out, because that is an issue, and it was exposed with Daytona State making that sort of run. So it is what it is. You know, hire me and TJ to be on the seating committee if
hire Bepic at least. Just get the spreadsheet guy.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't think the seating committee is usually watching our podcast, so I think our pleas are falling on deaf ears. But we'll see what happens going forward, because there are a lot more tournaments to be seeded for CRL with the opens coming up. But pool number 3, Akron Gold end up taking it over Oklahoma Christian, who went 0-2 in qual match. I think they went 0-4 overall in qual matches. Oklahoma Christian did in qual 1 and qual 2. So Wichita State and Akron Gold, TJ, qualify for league play in this pool, and I did not see this coming.
Yeah, at about lunchtime on Championship Sunday of Tri-Cities, I looked over to my co-casters and I said, you know what I'm seeing? I'm seeing a lot of the same signs of the OC team a year and a half ago who fell out of CRL and then before we knew it, completely fell out of the top 16 at one point. Like they were a team who could not buy a win to save their life. But what I also will say is that I have known these guys for years. Me and North go all the way back to 2020, 2019, playing each other in national tournaments as high schoolers. This team's got the talent.
Yep.
I just hate that they don't have, and I don't know if Talo or Butter is working with them consistently enough, but they're missing some sort of mental charge. Whether it's a coach, a captain, something's missing. Now, granted, I said that midday Sunday. By the end of the night, they won the entire tournament, beating Indiana Tech. So that was finally the showcase that I was waiting to see from this team. But at the same time, I unfortunately just don't know what happened on this event. I'm not saying that Akron Gold don't deserve to be in CRL, but OC can't lose those. They just shouldn't. And don't get me started on the Wichita sweep.
Dude, I mean, to be fair, Akron Gold right now might be better than the A team. Like, they actually beat the A team out in the CECC Midwest qualifier to get the CECC spot. Like, last year, yeah. So for those that don't know, in CECC, you can only send one team per school. And so for schools like Akron and St. Clair and like Bruton Parker, you can only send usually your A team. And the B team has to either travel with the squad and cheer them on from the sides and like play quals from the pit, and you don't really do much outside of that. But this year, Akron Gold, after watching last year and traveling because they played in the PCL event or whatever it was called back then, they now have taken the spot from Akron Blue by way of the CECC Midwest qualifier. Like, that's crazy to me. The fact that Akron Gold right now are probably better than the actual A team.
I can't disagree with you. I can't even argue it. And I will say this, like, Jan is somebody I consider a close friend in the scene to me. And I know for a fact that there's anybody in the Akron program, and this is going to sound aggressive, and I apologize in advance. If there's anybody in the Akron program who is fit for the biggest moments mentally, it is Jan by a mile. Now, the follow-up question is, but TJ, but 5UP's in RLCS. If 5UP actually cares about CRL, then he can change Akron Blue. But I don't think he doesn't want to travel. Like, for example, TNT is a great example. He's an A-team level player who travels to every living LAN because he wants to play, regardless of RLCS, regardless of CRL. Now, I know he's not Rank X. I know it's not exactly comparable, but if you care about winning, it's very easy to change team culture. 5UP has the ability to do that. And when it comes to Bullseye and Milio, I love those guys to death as well. Also, Coach Jack, love him to death as well. But same thing with OC. They're missing a mental leader. That B team, I know for a fact they're having fun because Patty, he's a food eating champion. He's an RLCS top 16 level player. Jan has also made a Swiss stage. And Oxy is probably one of the most slept-on players in the entire nation. So, yeah, give me Akron Gold, too.
I mean, look at the bracket. I didn't actually have a segment for this. I forgot to put it in the run of shows, so I'm putting it up now because we're talking about Akron Gold. But look, they beat Akron Blue in Game 7, and I mean, Blue just said it in chat. The main event run that Patty and Jonathan made as well is a testament to how they're playing right now in the game of Rocket League, and it's such a cool story to me. And when we saw the beginnings of this, TJ, last semester, where it was still the Emilio and Jonathan and Oxy Akron Gold, but at BBB and at DreamHack, they had these deep runs where they were beating good teams, and we saw how good they can be. And then I mean, I don't think necessarily replacing Melio is what elevated them even beyond that, but like bringing Patty in definitely can elevate you, because you're right, you got immaculate vibes in that roster, and now the results are starting to show. They started out kind of slow. I will say that I was doubting them in the first couple weeks of this roster's existence, but man, have they figured it out. They've got a style that works, and I mean, they're going to CECC at least, and they're playing in league play right now. Put the bracket back up.
Yeah, I mean, they entirely deserve it. And whenever, I said at the very beginning of this pool, like, OC cannot be losing those, but at the same time, Akron Gold does deserve it. We also,
Yeah.
I don't even know if we kind of like half glazed over the Columbia 3-0 as well that Akron Gold got. That's a
Mhm.
super, super like slept on result for them over a Columbia team that I would argue probably could have slash should have beat Wichita State. But man, we've been waiting on Wichita State with Knight to make, again, signature wins, signature runs, not in some random Midwestern LAN, not in
Yep.
some random middle of nowhere tournament, but in an actual national event. And my God, did they do that? 3 over OC.
Yeah, shout out to the Wichita State boys. Like finally have really proven what they can be as a team here. Like back-to-back massive wins for the program over Columbia, who actually, well, 2/3 of that roster they did beat on that random Midwest land that you just referenced. So whatever, but like 3-0, high stakes, qualifying for league play. And last semester, Oklahoma Christian was that team that showed up when they had to qualify. Like they didn't do great in actual league play, but in those qualifiers, they played in those qual matches like they had to, like you would expect from them. But not the case in these two quals. Bluey had the numbers. They went 2-12 in games in their 4 opportunities to qualify for league play. And yes, their competition was top notch, but still, Wichita State 3-0ing Oklahoma Christian here. And then we see what OC does on LAN this past weekend at Tri-Cities. So this is a really big win for Wichita State. And I know they're starting out rough in league play, but they could snatch a couple wins here and there in the 15 games that they've got to play.
Without a doubt. I mean, the only other thing that I'm going to add is Tigres. We don't get to see them in any events other than CRL. So again, look out for them in the opens. And then the only other quick things that I'll add is losers round 4 had
Okay.
about all of NECC Division 2 or 3, like in terms of teams like Fuel, Kennesaw, and then kind of miscellaneous teams like York, and then a shocker in Texas Dallas JV most recently. I just wanted to bring some eyes to that round
Mhm.
because Delaware with a big upset, West Virginia Lotus with a big upset, and then also I would say Fuel was upset in that series as well. That's Pyrex' team, let's see, CSTJ. Hey, that's me. Anyways, so I just wanted to bring eyes on that. That's all. We can keep moving.
Yeah, well, I mean, since we brought eyes on it, I'll keep my eyes there for a second. York losing to West Virginia Lotus. I don't know what to think about York anymore as a team. Like I know they're the Bosco boy carry, but like they should not be dropping out this early after what they were able to do in the fall for a couple of tournaments. It seems like they've fallen off.
Well, I mean, this is what's going to happen until you get your main player some help. You don't just sign one of the best Canadians available and then not get him some help. And now we're coming up on semester 2 of him having to hard carry, and the fact that they're even able, like the fact that we're talking about this roster as the standard is to beat teams like this speaks to Bosco and almost Bosco only in
Fair.
that regard. So I don't disagree that this is an upset, but the only reason we have this expectation of York is because Bosco is as good as he is. So I hate it because he needs help. That's it.
Yeah, we'll see if he gets it. I don't remember if this is completely true, but I seem to remember York being a local university option for Bosco Boy, and that's why he's there, not necessarily to play esports. But I can't remember for certain. I just feel like that was the case at the start.
Probably right.
But regardless, it's rough for a team that was ranked in the top 48. They end up dropping out, and then in my eyes, they drop out. We'll see where TJ's. I don't actually have a list put together, everybody. It's just TJ's we're gonna be talking about and picking apart, but also we'll compliment you where you deserve it. So you don't feel too bad from the chat. We're setting that expectation already. But let's do pool 4 real quick. This is still taking a while, even though we were glossing over it. But this is Ball State qualifying for league play, and then in lowers, Indiana Tech end up taking care of business against ETSU, and the Tech boys get to enjoy themselves a league play spot. Ball State as well, and so I think this is fairly expected all around. Maybe outside of Kennesaw State dropping out. I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah, I will be honest. Whenever we get to my rankings, I kind of turned a blind eye to this result because Kennesaw has never been a team to care enough about the opens. Like in the past, they've just completely only played in one of the opens, and that was it. In qualifiers, they don't show up all the way through, so I
Hmm.
didn't read too much into that result. But when it comes to ETSU, I mean, kind of a tough pull that this is one of those more so top heavy groups where it's Indiana Tech, it's Ball State, and then it's kind of a bunch of gatekeeper teams. So it was always going to be between those two, and that's why you saw a 3-0, very clear Ball State comeback victory in uppers, and then a very clear 3-0 in losers for Indiana Tech. I think in terms of big results, obviously Ole Miss getting the win over Kennesaw.
Hmm.
Again, gatekeeper style win. And then ETSU over Ole Miss, great result for them. One of their better wins this entire semester. Also, Florida sells, but again, the ups and downs of being a club team, unfortunately.
Yeah, Gator boys unfortunately are hot sometimes, but are also cold sometimes. I think should be their new mantra. Gator boys don't exactly stay hot right now, but UTSA. I think this is Turanturo's team, to be fair, and they actually do something for once. Like Turanturo's been there for 3 semesters now, 4 semesters
Sounds right.
maybe. It's been a little bit, but they actually haven't done anything worth talking about outside of like some CCS runs or what have you. But here they actually make a decent little run. They could be the next Penn State.
Well, I mean, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna jump that far because Penn State's got some like a good group of three. I think unfortunately they're more in Bosco's territory with York right now, but we'll see how the opens go. I am very intrigued, and the win over Florida is a big one. Don't get me wrong. Also, 1-goal games, absurdly close series.
Hmm. Hey, once upon a time, Penn State was like like York, like UTSA, where they had Nitrous, and he was the big highlight, and then they put pieces around him, and now they're making some serious runs. But that is the second qualifier that filled out league play. Again, shout out to Indiana Tech and Ball State for getting out of Pool 4. And then moving right along into league play, I'm going to show the Liquipedia page. I haven't gotten the spreadsheet yet, the official one. So we're using Liquipedia, which tends to be more up to date sometimes actually than the actual official CRL spreadsheet. Go figure. But we got a pretty banger start to league play here, and this happened at Tri-Cities. So we're going to start by talking about this results. Indiana Tech 1-0, Game 5 win over the team we thought was Thanos in Maryville. Massive victory for Indiana Tech, TJ. Were you watching that behind the boys when they were playing it?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get to watch both the St. Clair Concord game and the Indiana Tech Maryville game at the same time, as they were basically right after one another. So first off, Concord was lost that weekend. I hate to say it, but they really struggled to kind of get their bearings.
Yeah.
So they lose to St. Clair, and they also would go on to lose to Indiana Tech on LAN in game seven overtime. And then for Indiana Tech, they were simply the hotter team, and also that this is the best. And I said this on stream on LAN. It's the best we have ever seen Indiana Tech, and there's not only questions to be raised about their ceiling and their floor now, but then there's also questions to be raised about what is going on in the Maryville camp. Again, they're a roster who, like many of the top four, love to troll a game. This type of format where you play all the teams one time, this will kill those teams. Now, when they lock in, are they going to probably sweep through playoffs? I don't know yet. Maryville's got the talent to do so, but at the same time, huge win for Indiana Tech. And Maryville goes back-to-back game 5s in CRL, win one, lose one. Just an odd, very odd set of results.
Not bad from Syracuse taking them to Game 5, but Indiana Tech actually finished the job off. And I'm wondering if this is a product of Maryville as a trio no longer teaming for RLCS. If they're a bit more focused on their RLCS teams, which fair enough, that tends to be the central focus for a lot of these top teams and players that have RLCS ambitions. And so I'm wondering if we're seeing a product of that, because when they were still a trio and we were watching the beginnings of Maryville at the start of this semester, they looked unstoppable, but now they appear very much stoppable. 1-1 in back-to-back game 5s. So bit curious there. You really do have to pay close attention to Maryville over the course of the next couple weeks.
I mean, be on the lookout for who they play next. I'm not sure what week 2 has in store for them, but Akron Blue is not a free matchup. I see Ball State down there in week 2. I see Winthrop. I mean, which they have a pretty tough slate of games coming up here to finish off week 1 and then into week 2. So yeah, they need to pretty much only maybe lose one extra game to kind of stay in the spot that we expect them to be. But again, it's league play. There's a lot of room for error. We never know who's going to get upset and who's going to survive. It is 3 games every week, and yes, the scheduling is absurd. Don't get me started on that. They don't like to change it apparently, but we'll see. There's bigger teams I have bigger concerns about than Maryville right now.
Hey, it's tough to pack a 15-team or 16-team round robin into whatever schedule you're able to put together, but we've got some results trickling in, which is nice. Cumberland over West Virginia is a pleasant surprise for Cumberland fans. Like, they just keep going. They started ramping up, taking bigger and bigger and bigger upsets, and now they're just straight up beating West Virginia, who I think most people had as a potential favorite to nab one of those 4 spots that auto qualify you to the spring championships. And yet here they are, week 1, getting beaten by Cumberland with 3 straight wins as well. Like, look at that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hate being the more aggressive take on this, but I think this is an expected win. Like, ever since we learned that Hotshot is the real deal with the help of Naya and Polar, who obviously are coaching him into a new dimension, like, this team, like, Hotshot has to be viewed as a rank A player, and he has to be viewed as good enough to compete. And I love West Virginia. And Cosmic, I love chatting with him about Rocket League. We go back and forth every now and then. But unfortunately, I think the majority of that team has sensitivity to the bright lights. Especially like Gyro, I think is not playing to the degree that we would want him to play at, or the degree that I believe he can play to. I think it was a cold week for West Virginia, but I also believe that Cumberland were the favorite in that matchup.
Okay, I mean, I think heat-wise, that's definitely a pretty fair take, because Cumberland are one of, if not the hottest team in CRL at the moment, and so they get their win there. But St. Clair, I watched this series live, and I was like, because the desk of talent, they all 4 predicted St. Clair for this series, and I was like, guys, have we not been watching what Cumberland's been doing this semester? Someone's got to be brave and predict them. And then St. Clair kind of decimated them. But Vesh looks incredible right now. Like, Cumberland were just straight up outgunned in that series. St. Clair and their offense were unstoppable. It felt like Cumberland just could not get any sort of footing in defense, because all 3 members of St. Clair were on point, and Vesh especially on the vault, like an insane threat, which is really good when you're replacing Arju if you're playing at that level. Like, St. Clair is actually legit with how they're starting off league play.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to make the exact same point that I'm making with Cumberland, West Virginia, is that once we saw that Vesh was the real deal, it's time to view St. Clair as a contender once again. Now, granted, for Hotshot, he's coming from being a B+ level player to a rank A level player. Vesh is coming from being a rank A level player to a rank X level player, who I believe has been X before. So, unfortunately for Cumberland, like, I say one good thing about Hotshot, I say a bad thing. There are levels to CRL. And St. Clair, and this is going to be reflected in my top 48, we're going to talk about it, there is still a cutoff at the top, in my opinion, in terms of experience and expectations from some of these teams. But also, Hotshot in Twitch chat does have a good point. They had really, really big momentum getting the Concord match right before. So I think it was a pretty good timing week for them. And Hotshot's saying this in Twitch chat again as well. Like, he's got time. He's going to get better. Cumberland, with this roster change, is going to get better. St. Clair have had Vesh in the program for a while now. I think that sub was a lot easier to make than a brand new Hotshot who's a freshman.
And the question I've got for you is, where is the level right now for the top of CRL? Because Concord are struggling a little bit. They actually lost a LAN this past weekend. They got 3-0'd by St. Clair. And then Maryville's looking a little bit weak at the moment. So, like, where is the level? Is this St. Clair's league play to lose now, or because Baylor have questions about them as well with their like RLCS performances as a trio, and also what they did in Hawaii, where they won, but it wasn't a dominant victory. And so, like, of all the teams in CRL right now, you've got potential questions for pretty much everybody except for maybe Winthrop and St. Clair at the moment.
Well, and I'm glad you bring that up because again, we're gonna have this conversation down the podcast, like like down the schedule. As of right now, I believe that there is a clear cutoff in the top 5 with potential for the cutoff to move down to the top 6. Now, the teams that are right outside the top 6 on my rankings are teams who we just talked about and are also teams who still have a lot to learn with their new additions. So again, I'm going to save a lot of my thoughts because I want people's shock value for my rankings. But right now, I feel fairly decent in the top 5 being a lock and the top 6 being a potential lock. And when we talk about the school that's in my 6th spot, it has a lot to do with what's out of their control on their campus, which that might reveal who that team is, but we'll talk about it.
All right, well, let's go through other results because we've got NECC a couple of weeks actually to talk about real quick. So that's CRL, and we've got several more weeks of that we'll be talking about on the podcast. But NECC, we've got some catching up to do with results. Last couple of weeks since the previous podcast, where would that put us? Let me check the calendar real fast if it is actually 2 straight weeks of results we have to catch up on. But Indiana Tech still keeping up their form. Even in NECC. I mean, they're playing with Chippy in the NECC. I think it's a good place to start, TJ, because I want everyone to remember that Chippy is playing in place of Velocity in the NECC for Indiana Tech, and the Tech Yeah boys are still 4-1. Their only loss is to Fisher in week 1, and that was 4-1. They beat DU Red, they beat St. Clair Gold, they beat Oklahoma Christian, and they beat Ole Miss. Like, these guys are maybe right there with Cumberland as being one of the hottest teams in CRL.
Yeah, it is absolutely, it's their group to lose right now. Indiana Tech, even without the LAN win over OC, they have been absurdly hot and have really, really carried that momentum through the semester absurdly well. It is very hard to be a team who is around the top 16, top 12, and all of a sudden now you're looking like a team who could be top 10 on any given day and potentially push higher than that if the setting is right. And I am just so I'm going to sound like I'm glazing, but I promise I'm not. I am just overly proud of where this roster is at. And what I also mentioned this on the Tri-City Slam broadcast, there are few programs in the nation who are deep enough to make a bag pull in their own rosters, aka Akron Blue, Akron Gold, aka Indiana Tech A, Indiana Tech B, aka Phantom in the Winthrop program. If you can build a program like that, and again, I said this on the broadcast, Bub and Jake are incredible at their jobs. Chippy is a legend. I've known him since high school as well. And even though way back in the podcast I made the fateful error of saying that St. Clair Gold would beat Indiana Tech with a sub, I have very, very poorly been mistaken. So I'm glad to be mistaken. I'm glad to see Chippy on that lineup, killing it in NECC, and even the main lineup getting a few big signature wins as well. I just hope that we get to see them play through the full CRL season with the same momentum.
There's a certain trends with having a deep Rocket League program, with those programs finding success at the top level right now. And we got to talk about as well, Fisher's kind of that same conversation, deep program, but their varsity team, they are the undefeated squad in Group A at the moment. I believe lone undefeated squad. Let's check the standings real fast. Yeah, because with Oklahoma Christian, Indiana Tech, and Kennesaw State all trading wins, that does leave Fisher as the undefeated team here, TJ. And I mean, I think coming into this, they were probably still favorites, maybe between them and Oklahoma Christian, to win this Group A, and Fisher are backing it up. Game 7 win over Ole Miss 2 weeks ago, and then it took care of business against Davenport Road, which isn't too surprising.
Yeah, I mean, NECC and the way that it was seeded all the way back at the end of January, like, we are very quickly watching NECC turn into a breeding ground for CRL warm-ups and for CRL, like, heat checks, I would say. So, again, like, same thing with Indiana Tech. If they can just continue to carry this momentum into a few signature wins in CRL, then we're looking at contenders. I don't want to jump the gun yet because of last semester, but also Ivan is a huge step up from where the program was. So I'm going to hold off on a lot of my big kind of glazing thoughts, but I am very happy to see them having the success that they are right now.
And Akron Gold also full-road Oklahoma Christian last week, which I didn't notice that until just now. I was kind of distracted by Fisher's undefeated, Fisher being undefeated, and Indiana Tech having their run. But Oklahoma Christian got kind of stomped here by Akron Gold. And I'm going to click on this series to see what the actual game scores were.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's not great. I wonder what happened there.
Well, again, when I said it at Tri-Cities, I did say I was seeing a lot of the signs of an OC team that was ready to fall out.
That's
so
true, yeah.
I'm not going to lie, like, this is unfortunately one of those. Now, I will say, whenever we get to our rankings, we're going to have a really uncomfortable conversation about where OC stands, and that's going to be one of my hottest takes of the episode, so I'm just going to let that result. I'm just going to let that result fade.
Well, we got a speed run to get to TJ's rankings here. You're doing a lot of teasing right now, and good thing Group B is usually very boring, because in the last 2 weeks, St. Clair Green, they get their win. I actually beat Northwood in 7, which I don't think is too crazy a result here. This is about what you would expect from St. Clair versus Northwood, it going to 7 and then going either way. But that does mean that St. Clair are in pole position right now with their win over Concord in week 2. So they're likely going to be the number 1 overall seed, I would figure, coming out of going into NECC Division 1 playoffs. And then you've got Cleveland State beating Concord. Concord also lost an ECAC to Mount Aloysius, and I'm wondering what's causing that, because those are losses that I see and I'm like, okay, the internet stuff has to be affecting them.
Yes, and also the broadcast did a pretty good job of bringing that up, that Concord is having severe infrastructure issues. I have not really made a lot of public statements on that because it has to do with me transferring in and out of that program. So I've been very hesitant to talk about that. But what I can say is that, yes, absolutely, it is hurting this team, and they simply cannot play the way that they're meant to.
All right, fair enough. And that's kind of what I figured in seeing those sorts of losses. But outside of that, boring group with Davenport beating Bruton Parker. Okay, but this is probably the highlight of Group B, and that's probably the only highlight.
Yeah, I mean, that was when, well, actually, I take that back. That's a very recent result. Like, again, St. Clair, like, they look really good. They've been really hot. I think the wins like this show you why the Concord 4-1 earlier in the season was not an unexpected win for them. I'm also going to throw in the conversation as well. Like, I am pretty low. I'm pretty low on Northwood stock. I do still think they're a part of the upper echelon of teams where you can kind of cut off like who's the upper level, like where, like which teams are making levels in CRL. I do think Northwood is still at the cutoff, but I do think that they're 1 or 2 upsets away, like aka a Cumberland over Northwood Part 2 or a Concord over Northwood Part 2 from falling back. But we're gonna see them in the championship. I feel pretty confident about that, but it's, nothing's guaranteed.
I mean, they were dominant in Qual 1. Northwood was. They went through pretty unscathed. So they haven't shown really any reason to doubt that they'll be in that top 4 at the end of league play. So Kev Dog also said that it is their spring break, which is why they didn't have any results come in for league play this week. So we'll see them back in action pretty soon here. Division 2, we're gonna run through rather quickly. We've got UNCC losing a couple of series with Fanshawe. Actually, Fanshaw's undefeated in Division 2 East A. So shout out to Fuel as they've beaten, well, they got the forfeit win over Fisher Navy. They beat Conestoga, beat UNCC now. Conestoga beating Mountain Union, which is a decent result for them. But Outside of that, Fisher Navy going to 7 with Mount Union, maybe a little bit crazy. Fisher Navy, dude, I don't know what to make of that team. They could beat a top 25 team, and then they could lose to a team that you wouldn't even have close to the top 48. So I don't know what I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. This is one of the
That's
messier
fair.
groups.
Can move on.
Conestoga actually had a pretty good showing on LAN until Phantom decided to play like Phantom and shut them out in playoffs. So I'm fairly high on Conestoga. I am fairly low on Fuel, don't get me wrong, but we're talking about a bunch of top 48 rosters, and I
Yeah.
think Fisher Navy is like basically what I imagine is that Fuel, Conestoga, Fisher Navy, they're gonna keep trading out these games, and they're gonna keep running into each other. I think in the opens as well.
That makes sense. That's how that area of the rankings goes. And speaking of East B, still very much chaos. I mean, last 2 weeks we get South Carolina over BPC JV. You've got Winthrop Academy beating Florida. That happened on my stream. I think after the last time we recorded the podcast. Daytona State over Florida Southern happened on my stream as well. DSC looked so good in that series. And then you got Kennesaw State beat 4-0 sweeping Florida Southern here. I don't know what's going on with that set. I wish I'd gotten to watch it. That happened yesterday. And then Bruton Parker JV, they beat Daytona State last week in NECC. This is an absolute mess of a group. And I'll pull up the standings while you chat your opinions, TJ.
Yeah, no, I am also extremely
Look
confused.
at
Like, I had a
this.
good
What?
conversation with Dylan this weekend. Like, don't get me wrong, Kennesaw B have proved themselves multiple times, but I am still very confused as to Florida Southern and how hard they are struggling in this group. Like, don't get
Mm-hmm.
me wrong, South Carolina, Winthrop Academy, I expect that to be. Well, originally I expected that to be the contenders. Now Daytona State has proved me very wrong. Unfortunately, they've gotten hot into March, not hot into February. So those two losses are going to eat at them for a little bit until playoffs. But they'll be pretty safe to make that. But again, the teams who are willing to travel, the teams who are willing to compete on LAN, aka you're looking at the entire top four of this group and Bruton Parker JV. Like these teams are reaping the benefits that now we're in March. They've played one or two LANs as a unit together or as a mixed unit together, and they look really, really good. Unfortunately for Florida, Florida Southern, and UCF, all the Florida guys, I don't really know if I would make the argument that they were meant to be contenders in this group. Florida Southern still has growing pains. Again, Florida with the club standards, sometimes they are overly hot, and other times they are not.
Mm-hmm.
And UCF is kind of the clown in the photo of the four
Yeah.
military guys
Which
in this group.
which sucks because UCF is a good team. I think if you put them in
Absolutely.
East A, they probably rattle off a couple of wins and are right on the cusp of top four. But instead, the NECC sticks them in the group of death, where you got your top 7 teams genuinely that are playoff caliber rosters. I think if you put any of any of these teams in East A, they are a potential playoff team, no doubt about that. But yeah, Florida struggling here. I am quite surprised about. I mean, both Florida teams. Man, you get the gist. You summed it up well. We'll move on to West right quick. I'm gonna do a peep in myself and see if there's actually any notable results. Um, Southeastern Oklahoma State getting beaten by A&M. Shout out the A&M boys. This is a 4-2. It's cut off on stream. I know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a oh man, I don't know if it's an upset. I'm not gonna lie. I think both those teams are in pretty similar boats. Like I think it's gonna be a very funny argument to say that both those teams are like, yeah, are they locks for like the top 60? Yeah, absolutely. Top 48? You're losing me there.
I think it's definitely still an upset. I think Southeastern Oklahoma is way closer to the top 48 than A&M is, but still, yeah. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, we're not getting much out of looking at West Central, unfortunately. Indiana lose to Illinois State. I mean, man, Indiana's kind of fallen off. Pretty unbelievable with how at the start of this semester. I mean, I had them ranked top 35 from what they did at the end of fall, and I mean, now they're getting 4-0 swept by Illinois State.
Yeah, I don't have much to add about this one. It's just an absurdly confusing and upsetting loss for them. Again, it is kind of they're not a full varsity program. Where's their expectations? Like, you let these varsity program teams who are going to come out of nowhere, you let them grind, you let them train, you let them sit on their practice schedule for 3 months, and then we get to March and you got to win these NECC games and you get routed. It's definitely an upset. It's a huge upset being a 4-0, don't get me wrong. But again, with Florida, Indiana, like similar style teams, I don't know where to expect them every week. It depends on what happened the night before.
Yeah, that's college, I guess. That's why our scene is so chaotic. But I did just learn, thanks to Chippy and Bluey in Twitch chat, that
Oh
this
my
Miller
God.
is actually the Indiana Tech Miller that played on the A team with Chippy and Bluey. I didn't actually know that. I knew he graduated, but I didn't know he had gone to Illinois State. So he's still kicking in the competitive scene. So shout out, that OG Indiana Tech roster.
Yeah, I mean, Miller was a dog and still is. Fair play.
All right, well, that's NECC. I've got something I want to pull up on Discord real quick. This was the CECC Last Chance Qualifier announcement. This is, let's see how this pulls up actually, because I showed you the CECC Midwest qualifier. We're going to crop this because this is our Collegiate exclusive little Discord channel, but there we go. We've got last chance qualifier. Make sure anyone that is interested in potentially qualifying for CECC that has not gotten a spot already, you are competing in the LCQ. March 28th through 29th. Registration ends March 22nd at 9 p.m. Pacific. This is an open bracket, 3 teams per game title. So you can send your A, B, and C team to try and qualify for the CECC, but only one team can ultimately qualify for CECC. So do make sure that you sign up. Join the Esports U Discord. If you aren't in it already, look up in Google Esports U Discord, and that's how you can get in there and qualify for CECC through the last chance qualifier, which is happening later this month. Registration closes in 12 days, so don't say we didn't warn you.
I also will add, not a negative, not a positive point, but I don't believe the LCQ was broadcasted until the later rounds, if at all. So all I will say is that if you are a team playing in the LCQ, please stream your runs, because I want to be able to watch this. And with the amount of talent from the top 64 to the top 32, top 16 even of CRL, that LCQ spot is going to be a gauntlet. And I don't even remember who got it last year. I'm going to be honest, but I know regardless, it is going to be a struggle to try and find your way into that spot. So best of luck. Oasis also informed me they only stream finals for LCQ. That's a shame. That's all I got to add.
Give me like 2 more clicks, I can tell you who got it last year. So there were 2 last chance qualifier spots. They went to St. Clair and Northwood. So there you go. That's who ended up getting it.
Yeah.
With how
Okay.
stacked those regional quals were.
Okay. Yeah. Because I guess, does St. Clair even get to participate in a regional qual?
Actually,
I
don't
don't think they.
remember if
I
Canada
don't know if they
is
do.
in under the regions. That's a pop quiz question that I do not have the answer to, unfortunately.
Well, look out for St. Clair in the LCQ. I'm very intrigued. Oh, they do get the North? All right. Thank you, Oasis, who's obviously more knowledgeable than how we are on CECC.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have lost track of the bids a little bit. I need to do some catching up.
Well, moral of the story, again, LCQ is going to be miserable for everybody playing in a good way. It's going to be a lot of really good games, a lot of really good content. Please stream your runs. And again, best of luck.
And another NECC shout out real quick. They did a Project 3 tournament, and I don't have the bracket link on me. I mean, this isn't a massive tournament. Your top 3 teams are Mount Union, Carthage, and Center College. Ooh, wow! Center College is not a great team on the grand scale of CRL. But Mount Union did end up winning the NECC Project 3. I'd love to see more teams competing in this, because there are a lot of good Division 3 Rocket League squads out there. But Mount Union, shout out! We didn't really shout them out in Division 2 this week, but they've been getting some decent wins. Not exactly top 48 material, but they do win win this little Project 3 tournament that happened. It was a couple weekends ago, but it was a Mount Union win there.
Yeah, I mean, again, we talked about this right before we went live. I am quite confused in regards to how Carthage did not win
well,
this.
Let's clear it up, actually. X-Ray has just informed us that was their B team that competed. So this is another instance of people that are covering Collegiate Rocket League not doing it properly, because next to Carthage in that tweet, it should say Carthage Esports B or whatever color. I think is it black or red that the B team is. Like, you can't tweet that out, and it's just misinformation. Whatever.
Yeah, I'm not going to add anything more. I'm going to say it meaner than you just did.
Go to Nace. Let's see what Nace is up to this week. Again, this is going to be terrible cropping. I hate League Spot so much. I'm feeling feisty this week. Actually, it's showing up fairly well. All right, not bad. I'll take back my feistiness. But this was last week's results. ETSU beating Winthrop with Phantom in. It's the same deal for Winthrop. So still a pretty good win for ETSU, honestly. But then you got Burton Parker beating St. Clair, West Virginia beating Cumberland, where it doesn't matter in Nace, and then losing to them in CRL.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking through these results while I was making my top 48, and unfortunately, like, I've talked with Phantom back-to-back weekends over two different LANs, and one thing that we basically both agree on pretty heavily is when it comes to the main team and how seriously they're taking Nace, it is not very serious. So I'm done reading into Winthrop's losses in Nace. I think it's useless for now. And also, yes, you're highlighting that it wasn't even Phantom who subbed in for that game. So thank you, Monster King, for highlighting that.
Yeah, thank you.
But again, that's my point, is like, that's what me and Phantom really agreed on, is that, you know, the A team doesn't take it seriously, which makes sense. Garrett can't play. He can't make it to campus on those days. So be it. So it's a great little resume confidence boost, but I can't read into it much further than that.
All right, and Oasis pointed something else out. This week, this is the first week I didn't actually like scroll down and look at these results because they've been so boring the last couple of weeks. But we've got George Mason beating Wichita State in Game 5. Again, not getting the wins where it matters in CRL, but it's still a decent win with Nace. But apparently Wichita State is 3-3. Let's do some live looking at where did they go? I just had them. Had a bye. Let's just look at their results here. So they've got the loss to George Mason. They lost to Cleveland State, actually, in Game 5 recently. They played a lot recently. They lost to North Texas as well. What is happening here? That's the starting lineup.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Like, this is, and again, like, all I'm going to say is that, like, when I was looking at my results, and you're going to see where I rank Wichita State, and then results like this are going to start making sense about why I ranked them the way they're ranked. I have never been, I love Boone, love Knight. Funny enough, I'm working with Knight with his RLCS team with CMS and Arju this season. So don't get me wrong, love Knight. And I've been a Knight supporter, but I've been very hesitant to be a Wichita State supporter because, again, that consistency, that level of hours, it's missing.
Yeah, that's a perplexing one. I didn't realize they played back-to-back series. Must have been a rough March 6th for the Shockers there, losing to Cleveland State and UNT. So, all right, there you go. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Wichita State boys in Nace, but it is Nace at the end of the day. Baylor also got a 3-0 win over Akron. That was played last week, but it's a part of this week's matches, which are St. Clair versus ETSU, Bruton Parker versus Ball State, and then West Virginia versus Winthrop. And so nothing too crazy jumping up off the page for this week's matches.
Yeah, I think those are all three pretty safe predictions if you're a betting man. I think I'm just going to leave it there.
All right, well, let me pull up PCL now. We'll run through them just to see what they're getting up to. I stopped checking PCL in the lead up to our podcast because there's never anything good. And if there is, then we can just like run through it real quick and see if we actually got a decent match this week. So we've got Akron versus Brock this week. Could be all right. These are previewing. This isn't last week's results. George Mason versus Syracuse. Oh, it's happening next week. Okay, never mind. Columbia, San Jose State. Okay, nothing cool. Let's see if we get any crazy results. live reactions right here, right now to PCL results. Brock, Game 5 win over Maryland. Another instance of Maryland being inconsistent. You got Fisher Navy 3-0ing Syracuse. Okay, TJ, do we see this one?
I guess I missed that when I was doing my rankings earlier. I'm going to be very honest. I'm glad that this is the way that it is because I have I have Fisher Navy moving up in my rankings, but not moving up to this degree. We just talked about this before we went live as well. Syracuse is worth considering how hot they are because, yes, they qualified for CRL, but if we're being truly honest to an absolute T, Syracuse have struggled in the PEC. Obviously, they struggle here in the PCL. Now, granted, yes, Ivan is playing, but I would argue Syracuse should still be winning, even though it's a very tough matchup for them. Again, I'm not sold on Syracuse this semester. I was very much confident in them last semester, and I think they're running out of gas. They're going to need a second wind.
Yeah, which is crazy considering the hours that their boys are putting in right now. Like you'd expect eventually that they start getting those wins in the PEC, like over well, they beat Michigan State at the start of the semester, but and then you're still losing to Boise and to Baylor on LAN, and then Michigan State on LAN again. Yeah, Syracuse is a confusing one, but they've got CRL at the very least. They're losing to Fisher Navy and PCL, whatever. As long as you get some wins in CRL, you get some of that confidence back. But PCL as well did announce for those of you in chat or listening that may be members of PCL, there's a $5,000 prize pool tournament for Rocket League and Valorant for players in the PCL community. This is a partnership with Rewired Fest, which is kind of a crazy pull. For those that follow my life way too much or like have great memory retention, I worked with Rewired Fest over the summer. This was the thing I was traveling to different cities in the Southeast promoting like PUBG Mobile for in different Walmart parking lots, and they're partnering with PCL now, which is a crazy partnership out of nowhere that I was not expecting. But prize pool is first place for the winning team is almost $1,300, which is not bad if you're already in PCL. So decent little payday for an April weekend tournament. So just wanted to put this out there for those that are playing in the PCL.
I missed this completely, I guess, while I was looking through the websites and my feed, and I'm just, I really wish I had more useful comments on this one, but I think you summarized it pretty nicely, and definitely look into it.
Yeah, it's just like a PCL community thing, essentially. I only saw it because I was looking at results, and I just happened to like scroll through their website where they had this page about it. So they're doing that. ECAC as well announced their LAN. Actually, it's happening in San Antonio, Texas, deep in May. And let me again, okay, cropping's not bad, so I'm just gonna put it up there. Founders Invitational is the name of it, and it's gonna be invitational for Titans level teams, and it's only 4 teams for Rocket League. So it'll be a small LAN, but still an ECAC LAN happening May 14th through 17th, which is after CECC, which is after a lot of schools get out for the summer. So it'll be interesting to see which teams actually end up competing here.
Yeah, my bigger issue with this, and I love the ECAC crew, but that is DreamHack Atlanta weekend.
Is it really?
And it is just not a good idea to try and run this college tournament over the same weekend as DreamHack Atlanta. I say that both personally as the organizer, but I also say that as a general spectator. And especially for ECAC, who seem to be taking their first major step towards where NACE was 3 years ago, right? Where they only selected a few games and they had 4 teams per title, and we were all like, that's not enough, but they were growing as a varsity program. This is exactly what NACE was going through. So I'm really happy to see them taking the steps into legitimacy and to being a varsity league worth talking about more than what we already talk about them with. But I also think that, unfortunately they picked a pretty rough weekend, and also everybody just loves going to Texas. So fair play to them. I'm glad they at least got it in San Antonio.
It is in the middle of the states, which makes it easier, I'm sure, to travel for everybody. But Oasis also said that this is part of Forge. Oh, this is the Rally Cry event as well. I did see something about what Rally Cry is hosting out in San Antonio, but I don't have the information on it immediately. But this is a bigger event than just the ECAC LAN, so that's that is worth noting. But it is in the middle of May, so we'll see how that affects things. I know the NECC LAN had that same sort of issue with teams dropping out with their LAN being deep into May last semester, but that's a long ways off. I just wanted to shout out the announcement so everyone is aware, because we got a bunch of other LANs to talk about that have actually already happened, and we're gonna start small, work our way up, TJ, because the Queen City Clash happened a couple of weekends ago, and we had some notable names there where it is worth talking about on the podcast. And so this was several weekends ago now up in at the University of Cincinnati, where you've got your QCC staples like Bruton Parker, like UTK Retirement Home, BPCU JV there as well, Indiana Tech B, Kennesaw State Premier, and let me pull up the exact. Okay, this is Kennesaw State B. That's competing there, but still pretty decent land. South Carolina too. So shout out South Carolina.
Well, Kennesaw State B, but missing Reese, because unless that's a gamer tag like his Epic or something, I don't know who that is, if I'm being honest.
This is the third that they've been playing with this semester.
Oh, has Reese not been starting over the last month or so? Am I crazy?
I gotta confirm it because I don't. Oh, Ice is Reese. Okay, that's the name that's been on their roster this semester. Okay, I didn't know.
I thought I was going crazy. Okay, never mind. I take my point back. Here's what I will say though. Bruton Parker doing what Bruton Parker does, being the gatekeeper team we expect them to be, and they played like it, and they took care of business very well. If there was a select few stories I was very happy about. From the lower side of things, I'm very happy about Akron White. That is Shock's team, and he is the only SSL on his roster. I am very, very happy about how they perform getting the 2 seed in their group. And Shawnee State gets eliminated in that group. That was a huge deal watching that event live. I am also happy for Central Florida, who's over there placing and surviving. Unfortunately, the Rising roster got a group with them, and, so be it. Yeah. And I was also very happy about UGA beating UTK Bingo Ballers. I was pretty happy about that one. But in terms of jokes aside, like your bigger storylines, UTK Retirement Home, I had big expectations for them to make grand finals. They unfortunately did not. But also South Carolina, fully deserving of what they did this weekend. They did incredible after they got seeded against Bruton Parker because they lost in their groups. Then they make the losers bracket run of nightmares and dreams, and they go all the way through, and they reset, and then it wasn't enough. So really, really happy about South Carolina, and that LAN was, I believe, 2 weeks ago now. So good on them.
Oasis is now telling us that these groups are wrong, that Shawnee State did make playoffs, and yeah, look at that. He is right. Shawnee State's down there. Oh. They did make a run to top 4, which that's Liquipedia, little bug right there is what it is. But yeah, Shawnee State, hey, at least they make that run, beat Indiana Tech B. That is a good win for Shawnee State, who have been struggling this semester. But South Carolina is definitely the biggest story of this LAN. Bruton Parker win it, but this was their LAN to lose. Honestly, UTK Retirement Home, they are just not there with top 32 teams anymore. They can hang, but you can't really expect them to get these wins consistently. I think the ETSU victory in CRL is where their peak is right now, and ETSU's having a rough day even.
Yeah, I mean, again, this event was kind of cookie cutter in terms of your top few teams. And also, apologies for the misspeaking on Shawnee State. I got to watch live in groups, and I got to watch live in upper, losers, and grand finals. So I apologize for missing that detail.
Okay, but actually, we'll let you off the hook, TJ, because apparently IU couldn't play day 2, says Chippy. So Shawnee State didn't make it, but they filled in and then got those wins in the bracket. So you were right. It's just a confusing little CRL LAN moment.
Yeah, I'm not gonna add much more. Queens, I'm really proud of where the University of Cincinnati's esports club is at for running this event consistently, but also they are kind of the club tournament standard,
Yeah.
like the top 48, top 32 maximum standard of a LAN. So I don't have much more to add because I'm confused.
That's all right. I think QCC is the perfect encapsulation of what a smaller regional LAN hosted by a school should be. Like, this is a great example of what a club program can do when you've got passionate people with know-how, with experience, and you get a really cool grand final in Bruton Parker versus South Carolina. So shout out QCC as much as you can. They deserve as much praise as they can. That's what BBB used to be like before we even got that next step taken by the University of Kentucky. So QCC deserve love. But we got to now look at Tri-Cities Slam, because this is a perfect encapsulation of what a regional LAN can be at the very, very top level when hosted by a school with good backing, with sponsorship ability, or sponsorship getting ability in ETSU. You get yourself a top-notch CRL LAN. Everyone's about to get flashbanged. You can already see it on my face. Boom, here's the Google Sheets. As TJ, you were there. I didn't get to watch a ton of this. I was busy this weekend with other LANs that I was working, so I'll let you do the biggest breakdown here.
All right, let's go ahead and talk about it. We'll go one group at a time. Group A was Concord's group to lose. No shocker there. Northeastern gets a very rare chance to prove themselves. Unfortunately, they could not, but don't get me started. Kennesaw State played out of their minds. Game 5, Winthrop Garnet. Dylan scores 4 goals in the span like a minute 20, maybe even less than that.
Let's go, Dylan.
Dylan had an absurd game 5. TNT looked great as always. They also brought I gotta remember the name. They also brought Condra with them as like their sub / just one of the C team guys, a freshman out of the Georgia high school system. He even stepped into the booth as a caster.
Let's go.
So I was very, very happy. I just wanted to shout him out because he deserves it. We can move on to Group B.
All right.
This one was headed, WTC, Daytona State, Cinema. 2 rosters, once again, who don't get to go to a lot of LANs, who don't get to really highlight themselves, and they had some of the best performances I have seen. Also, in terms of teams who hung around and cheered on other teams and socialized and were involved in what a LAN is meant to be, I have nothing but full respect for what Daytona State and WCTC did as people, as players, and as competitors at this event. And their group series was one of the best of the entire group stage. Very, very happy for both those programs. But again, a pretty telegraphed group. Bruton Parker Academy was pretty disappointed about their results, but also I don't think it's fair to say they were expected to make it out. Pretty tough pull for them.
Yeah, I mean, those are top 32 teams right there. They stay with potential, maybe. WCT with potential as well. Indiana Tech, absolutely a top-notch team right now. They look good that weekend. I was able to catch one of their bracket games that we'll talk about later.
Group C, the group of death. My God, if you are Indiana Tech B, I am so sorry because they do not deserve. If you put Indiana Tech in probably or Indiana Tech B, you put them in any other group as the bottom seed. If I'm being so honest, they probably could find a way to go 2-2, or at the bare minimum, they can go 1-3. Like Indiana Tech B, they probably do beat Northeastern. They probably could beat James Madison. Like they could sub in and fill those roles, but unfortunately, luck of the draw or bad luck of the draw. It's the way that it goes. And things got super dicey in this group, Bepic, because as you can see, this group started off on Saturday with Florida losing in Game 5 to Texas Dallas Senior Center. That loss alone, that should have ruined their Saturday. That should have taken them out completely because you have Bruton Parker and Oklahoma Christian in the same group. If you were wondering how bad Oklahoma Christian was looking coming into this event, that's where they got put. They were the 3 seed overall in this group. And because of the way things happened, including Florida saving their entire tournament lives by beating Oklahoma Christian, which is one of their best wins, if not their best win However, they find their way back into groups. And if you're wondering, how is Florida over Texas Dallas? Unfortunately, this is one of the only things I disagreed with over the weekend. Head to head was not the first tiebreaker. It came down to game differential. Florida had that win to get them back. And unfortunately for UTD, that's how it shook out. I do feel really bad for Zora and the team there. That was a tough one.
These are 4 teams that you would love to see in the playoff bracket. I'd love to see Indiana Tech be in the playoff bracket as well, but not quite on the same level as the 4 other teams in the group. But yeah, that is a sucky way to go out here, especially like when you close out with getting swept by Bruton Parker and taking. I guess they would have needed 2 games to get up there with Florida in game differential, but it still is a real sucky way to go out. But that's LAN right there. UTD's got some kind of curse on them, I swear.
It's been a pretty rough few weeks for both teams, that's for sure. And speaking of disappointments, this is one of my biggest, like when I was trying to follow the groups before I got there on the 7th, this was one of my biggest disappointments, was James Madison doesn't make it out. I was so sad to see that. But also, let's talk about a positive out of this group. ETSU beats Akron Glue in Game 5. Now, I won't say it's a signature win for them, but it is a pretty dang good one. That was it was Milio, Patty, and Bullseye who played, which is why they were under Akron Glue. They were really fun to be around. Love those guys. And we'll talk about how they did in playoffs. But big result for ETSU. Also, Conestoga. We go back and forth on this team. Every single week, they look really good. They get a good win, they take a bad loss. They get a good win, they take a bad loss. For them to be the gatekeeper team in this group, they did a pretty good job with a 3-1 win over James Madison. And unfortunately for Kentucky, them and the University of Georgia were filler teams at this event. And unfortunately, they kind of got thrashed because of it. And Kentucky, I have to say this because I'm a dog at heart. Kentucky was technically the last place team in this tournament. So unfortunate for them. UGA was 1 spot above.
Hey, I'm sure, and I wasn't there. I didn't talk to the Kentucky guys. I bet they showed up and they still had fun on LAN, because that's kind of what those guys do. Even with a poor performance, like they'll show up and they'll have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And we can move down to playoffs now because, Bepic, this is where things get horrendous. And by horrendous, I mean beautiful. So first off, I guess we can start in losers. Why not? The upper bracket matches actually happened on Saturday night. And those were pretty tight. And we'll talk about them in a second. But let's talk about losers. Winthrop Garnet 3-0 over Conestoga. My Lord. And Coach Risky did just add that they were with their sub. Don't get me wrong, but Winthrop Garnet looked like a different animal this day. And also, speaking of different animal, the very first match of Championship Sunday was WCTC in Florida on the main stream. WCTC gets there about an hour and a half, like an hour-ish early. They had plenty of time. Florida shows up with about 15 to 10 minutes to spare, and by the time they get set up, they basically had to start, and it showed in their gameplay. Had a miserable game 1, had a slightly better game 2, had an overtime game 3, and it wasn't good enough. And I hate, one of my biggest regrets not being a member of any team is that Florida didn't warm up for that series. They looked so good after a full day of play on Saturday, and then they just didn't show up in time to get ready for Sunday. So I really hate it. But also WCTC getting a win, I'm not upset about that either. Now, bracket of doom and gloom, the bottom end. Akron Glue and Oklahoma Christian should never have been on the same side, and Daytona State probably had the worst bracket pull or group pull out of any of the teams next to UTD. They had easily the worst pulls, and then unfortunately they both fell victim to Akron and Oklahoma Christian, and then Oklahoma Christian would go on to go unstoppable all the way through all of those teams. They basically either 4-1 or 4-0'd all of those. And then they make their way to grand finals. On the top side, Winthrop Garnet, again, looked like a different animal, but this was the weaker side of the event. So Indiana Tech made quick work of Winthrop Garnet, and then we got Game 7 overtime. Concord, Indiana Tech, me and Taquito on the call,
Mhm.
a huge grouping of students and players stayed for the entire event. It was such a cool series, and if you have not watched the VOD back, I would heavily recommend going to, because I'm going to glaze myself and the teams here. I think it was unironically me and Taquito's best call, one of our best calls ever, but it was also by far the best series of the entire weekend, and Concord getting upset had the crowd in a frenzy. It was a big bluey crowd, to say the least, and they did a great job.
Yeah.
And then
Oh, I
before
want
we
to
get to
jump in real quick. Hold on, before you move on from that semifinal. That was the one series on Sunday that I actually got to watch live. The other ones I either caught bits and pieces of or had to go back and watch. And I will like take out your personal bias from saying that was yours and Taquito's best call. Like genuinely, like my opinion, you guys absolutely killed that cast. It was so hyped. The gameplay was phenomenal, and the casting on top of it made that one of the best LAN matches I've ever watched as a third party spectator. But my God, the Indiana Tech, like I love the Concord boys, but I was rooting against them. They've won too many LANs. I wanted something different to happen here. And so I was pulling for Indiana Tech in this series. And my roommate wasn't home this weekend, and so he didn't hear all of the audible yelling and gasps that I was letting out while I was watching this series. That's how intense it felt. Like I was at home in my chair, like feeling the emotion of that series. The crowd was fantastic. It felt full on the broadcast. And then they showed how people were actually watching. I was like, wow, this is a collegiate LAN. It is exactly what it's supposed to be in my head, in my dream world. And Indiana Tech had to hold on for dear life in that Game 7 overtime too. There was one moment or Concord were building up more and more possession, and I thought, okay, this is where they actually close them out. Bluey has this third man challenge at midfield, like up at like ceiling height, and if he misses it, like he got a toe on it just barely, and if he misses it, it's game over. Concord wins. They got 3 guys that can turn the open net in. But Indiana Tech played gutsy Rocket League in that series, and I was really impressed with that, because last semester the whole thing with them was they weren't a LAN team. Like they would choke in the big series on LAN. Happened in Chattanooga. It happened against Ball State in their the Indiana LAN as well. And so with that in mind, I was like, Concord should absolutely be winning this, or Indiana Tech are finally the complete team that we were hoping that they would be. And I think we figured out who they are.
And for Indiana Tech to lose to Bruton Parker in that uppers match on Saturday night and to make the run that they did, that was also a very tight Game 7 series, and it was beautiful to watch. Concord did thrash ETSU in the other one. I'm not going to talk about that one. But my gosh, Indiana Tech, Bruton Parker, that was me and Carson, I think, who had that series, and it was probably the second best by a mile at that event. It was incredible to witness as a caster, not only the Indiana Tech loss, but then the regain into Sunday, and to be on the cast for both of them, I was truly honored to get to work those 2 games. And then grand finals rolled around, and unfortunately there had to come a point, whether it was Indiana Tech sleeping the entire car ride home or whether they crashed out in grand finals, and there had to come a time where there was so much going on and there were so many emotions, and that's unfortunately kind of how it went. So on that note, a really good weekend for Indiana Tech. Don't get me wrong. Very good weekend for them. But Oklahoma Christian, I won't lie, that's a team who has yet to get one good major LAN win. It's a team that has taken so many bad losses this semester and a year ago, and they finally proved themselves in front of a very good crowd who actually had about halfway rooting for them and halfway rooting the other way. And we got to do team walkouts. I got to scream and introduce the players, got to do the interviews after. It's hard to root against Oklahoma Christian.
Yeah, those are good guys. And I mean, they had a top 4 at BBB last semester as well. You can't forget about that, how stacked the Bluegrass Boost battle was. And I think I was going to try to remember who they lost to in semis.
Uppers.
Okay.
And then they lost to whoever it was. It was St. Clair. They beat Concord in uppers, had to play St. Clair in semis, and then Concord beat St. Clair in the final.
All right, so it was like a little circle of wins right there, which had Oklahoma Christian kind of left out to dry. But they do get their LAN win, and this was a stacked LAN as well. I mean, you're talking about several top 25 teams with Bruton Parker, ETSU, Concord, Indiana Tech, Oklahoma Christian, and then a bunch of teams as well that can really punch up. Akron Glue, you never know what you're going to get with the Akron mix and match LAN teams, and so that's a team that could have taken them out. They had to blow through ETSU and Bruton Parker as well, and they've got so much LAN experience. And they started their runoff with Daytona State too, who are one of the hotter teams in CRL right now. So that's a legit run. Like, yeah, they don't beat Concord in the bracket play. They actually don't play them at all on LAN, and that's the only thing that you could take like a little bit away from Oklahoma Christian. But other than that, that was a really stacked bracket run.
Yeah, and I hate that I yapped about it for a really long time, but I had to. It was such a fun event.
Yeah.
I was very, very happy to be a part. Also, huge shout out to Jeff and Lee and East Tennessee State. Big shout out to Nutty, who was the main TO. Big shout out to the entire casting crew, and even Somber, who was making his debut on LAN as Indiana Tech's coach. Those are all homies of mine and yours, and it was a really good time.
That right there is why we need more regional LANs like that are propped up by good sponsors, by good schools, good programs that have buy-in from the teams competing as well, from people watching as well. That is another great example of what LAN should be, and we've gotten several of those the last couple semesters. I think the Chattanooga LAN that UTC put on was a great example. I think DreamHack's a great example of a lot of good buy-in. And we get another one here. Hopefully, Boost on the Beach this weekend going to be something similar, because we do have to talk about that, TJ, since you and I will both be in Myrtle Beach this weekend. Syracuse put out a little press release for it, so we're not going to really go through it, but it does cover the Boost on the Beach gist pretty well. But I don't know if this is fully public yet, but we're about to make it public because it's happening this weekend. These are the groups of Boost on the Beach that'll be coming up this weekend, and not quite as stacked as the Tri-Cities Slam, but we're still talking about a lot of good teams.
Well, I did not know we were going to pull the groups up, if I'm being honest, so I hope that we're allowed to do that.
Yeah, I don't care at this point. Like, people should know that this is what you need to be tuning in for this weekend. I don't know if the groups are public, but these are the groups. It's happening in 4 days, guys. We got to make it public at some point.
And also, I have been the Grand Finals caster the last 2 years. You joined me last year, and we're supposed to join me the year before for Grand Finals. So I think we have a right to talk about it. So let's go ahead and talk about it. One positive, one negative. The positive is that we still have very good matchups with teams who need to prove themselves. However, the negative is that it is an RLCS weekend, and unfortunately, Boost on the Beach is unable to support anybody's RLCS runs, which has always been the case. That's just how it is, but it also sucks because we lost a lot, Bepic. We lost a lot of the top 12 and top 16 from that. But I'm very happy with the people we're going to get to see and the competition we're going to see, especially in the top 4 of each group.
Doing some production real fast. There we go. We got a logo up there now. It just looks like a box in the middle of the void. But yeah, and this is, Chippy, no prize pool for Boost on the Beach, but the venue was one of the most unique in all of Collegiate Esports, honestly. It's just a regular restaurant that's at some point during every hour, like a huge party breaks out, music is blaring, people get up on the tables to dance, and yeah, it's a unique venue for sure, and these teams are still coming out to party in Myrtle Beach for the weekend. And for Syracuse, I mean, they are the program that is hosting it, and also the top seed. I think for obvious reasons when you're looking at the invited teams here, TJ. I mean, this is their land to lose, but it is very much losable, and so there's a lot of pressure on Syracuse to perform here.
There is absolutely an argument to be made for the top. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, but you got to hear me out. Okay. Maryland at Boost on the Beach has had their best performances in a long time. They tend to be at their hottest in Myrtle Beach. So I don't know if they're going to beat Syracuse, but they still have to prove themselves against South Carolina, against James Madison, not to mention the Florida Southern, the Tennessee Knoxville matchups. Those are not give-me's. Not a single one of those are give-me's. So Maryland's got to prove themselves. Now, here's one of the biggest question marks. Is UTK a retirement home going to play to, at the bare minimum, like 80% of what we know they can do? Because if they play to that degree, they could beat ETSU in groups. They very easily could. But then I make a follow-up argument and I say that ETSU can also be really hot. They have a really good ceiling, but they also have a very low floor. So it is still Syracuse's to lose despite all of that. But there is a million factors within that top four alone that can change the entire pacing of this event. Not even before I get started with a South Carolina roster that won't have Og, with a Florida Southern roster that still has yet to find a signature performance, with James Madison and Texas Dallas rosters who have struggled heavily to remain in the top 48.
Yeah.
There's a lot of storyline. I haven't even talked about Charlotte yet, who we've been disappointed by so many times over the last year or two. They had a great showing in Charlotte this year at their home event, even though it wasn't at their home campus, their home city. They did win that event, but I don't know how to feel about all these storylines. It's going to be hard to keep track of them all. There's just so many players with chances to clear their names.
Yeah, this is a pretty bad way to phrase this, but this is kind of the LAN of teams that have disappointed us at parts of this semester, or maybe at this LAN with Og missing. I'm disappointed that there's going to be no Og for South Carolina, but that doesn't mean I believe that we've got a T-man substitute for South Carolina. So super sub at the very least. Going to be fun to watch T-man playing with the boys, but like Syracuse have disappointed us on LAN. Like in Hawaii, they didn't beat any of the teams that they were within striking distance of beating, like Michigan State, Boise, or Baylor. ETSU had a complete flopping of qualifier 1 for CRL, and also have been a bit up and down since Adrift joined the lineup after what they did in the fall. Maryland have been inconsistent. South Carolina inconsistent and playing with a sub. James Madison inconsistent. UTD same deal. Florida Southern struggling in the NECC despite LAN experience here. They still could also struggle here. Northeastern have gone through a revamp since playing here last year and getting top 3. And then UNCC also inconsistent. Kansas and Coastal Carolina, I got no idea what to expect from them. But this is a LAN of teams that finally get like a chance against a field where there's not a defined favorites on LAN. If this was online, Syracuse are absolutely favorites by a mile. But this being on LAN, I think it is wide open.
Absolutely. And I cannot wait to be front row for all of it.
Yeah.
I am absurdly excited to see all of these teams. Me and you have so many friends on all these rosters. We pretty much have at least one person we know per roster, other than maybe the bottom two who filled in on late notice. Thank you to Kansas and Coastal Carolina. But I'm very, very excited trying to figure out where these groups are going to turn out. And, we were sitting there. We were seating a few weeks ago, and we even made a slight substitution in the groups. I won't clarify which team it was, but it's a pretty even pool. And again, I'm thrilled. There's so much to follow and talk about.
All right, well, we'll move on from Boost on the Beach. All of you, make sure you tune in this weekend. It's happening on LAN in Myrtle Beach. If you're in the area, come to the hangout at some point. Snipes will actually be around. TJ, I don't know if you heard about that. He messaged me about being there. So shout out Snipes. He'll be there supporting the LAN. So I'm excited to see everybody. We're gonna run real quick through the LANs that I was covering this weekend. I was doing this remotely. This was a LAN up in Lisle, Illinois, hosted by the DuPage Sports Commission. Actually, it's the Midwest Battleground, and they had. I'll actually pull up the Start GG page so you can all see just how many esports they are rocking with. Terrible crop. I was doing that blind, but yeah, this is all the tournaments that were happening here. But they had a Collegiate Invitational that featured a couple of decent rosters here. Carthage were the very much favorites to win the whole thing, and they did. But Michigan State, this is their B team. It's kind of cut off, but you also have Northern Illinois. GVSU is a pretty solid roster. Dakota State did well to get some decent wins, look good with the eye test. But small LAN, Carthage end up winning here. And this grand finals, TJ, included, it was game 3 with game advantage. It was like second played game. They had almost 14 minutes of overtime between Carthage and Michigan State Whites. And that was, I'm pretty sure, the longest overtime in like my thousands of Rocket League games casted that I've ever called.
I didn't even get to watch this event. I had no idea. That is,
stream was hard to find. I couldn't even find it, and I was casting it.
Yeah, that is the longest overtime I've ever heard of a collegiate game having, probably ever, as far as I'm concerned. That is something else, man, and good on you for your involvement in this event. It seemed like it was a whole lot of fun, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was it was a lot of fun for sure. A good display of a fun little regional collegiate event, and then they also had a BEC Invitational. Not a massive event at all. It was Michigan State and Maryland were the headliners, but this is the bracket that I mentioned earlier, where Maryland, they lost to Ohio State and Michigan State in groups, and then they lose to Wisconsin in round 1 of bracket play early on Sunday, and so they have to go through a lower bracket run, and then they get absolutely bushwhacked by Michigan State in the grand finals. Like it was not close. I was waiting for something to happen, and Turtle was literally the only player on Maryland that showed up in that series. I was really disappointed because I thought they could actually give Michigan State a run for their money, but it did not happen, and so the VEC finals was a little disappointing. But Michigan State, hey, they show up and they get their W on LAN as well.
I mean, fair play to Michigan State. They really keep finding themselves in situations where they get to go to these kind of miscellaneous Midwestern/Northern lands where they're the favorite. And that's not a knock to Michigan State. If you can go to lands and you can win, great, good for you. So good for them for taking care of business. I will say the Maryland group stage losses and the Wisconsin loss do concern me, but the fact that they still made the grand final and they went 3-1, 3-0, I'm willing to wipe that slate clean for them coming into Myrtle.
All right, let's hope, because I need Maryland to play better at Myrtle Beach than they did in that grand finals. That was a rough watch. But I see Tiz in chat as well. Yep, Tiz, I hope you're ready for next weekend, because this is gonna be a party and a half. I know it's a lot of players' first boost on the beach, and that's a unique, very, very unique LAN. So again, everyone, make sure you tune in for it. TJ and I will be there. That should be reason enough for you to watch it. But we got another LAN as well. This was announced. It's being hosted by St. Clair. It's a Rocket League Collegiate Invitational called No Man's LAN, and it's an invitational, but still, I figure we put it up here. I don't have much to say on it. It's happening this weekend, but hosted by St. Clair up in Canada. So another LAN to talk about.
I mean, it's going to be produced absurdly well. The job that Sean and his program do at St. Clair is incredible. It's going to be worth watching and tuning into. However, I will throw only one small negative. The marketing for this event has been pretty confusing. Me and Bepic were DM'd about this event, I think, 2 weeks ago. And obviously, as you guys know, if you're going to run an event in Canada and you're going to try and make it a international thing, it's kind of impossible to kind of make these announcements and get this real media push going. So unfortunately, I have a bad expectation. It's probably going to be a lot of Canadian schools. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, I think this LAN could have been a lot more, but we're going to watch it while we're obviously working boosts on the beach. So we'll keep a close eye on it. Best of luck to St. Clair.
Does look like they're letting free agent teams compete as well, based on this tweet from 5 hours ago. So I'm going to check the Start GG page. Looks like they've got other games as well. Rocket League Invitational. Do we have any sign ups? 5 entrants so far. Will it show us? Conestoga, Fanshawe, Waterloo's there, St. Clair Academy. Actually, 5 teams isn't great, but pretty good 5 teams, all things considered.
Well, and St. Clair Green and Gold should be playing, I think, based on what I've been told. They should be playing. So that's another 2 teams. And then hopefully maybe Bosco gets a Canadian super team and can pull up and be the 8th.
All right. Hey, that would be fun. You get a little free agent action with Bosco Boy at the helm. I wouldn't mind seeing that. So that's happening this weekend as well. Wanted to shout out the No Man's Land. But that's actually all the event coverage that we've got for this show. And now it's time to get to the fun part, TJ, where you put together a top 48 list. I did not. I was not brave enough. Had other things going on. But TJ did. And so I'm going to put that up on screen in 1 second. I got to do some work here.
While you're doing that, here's what I will say. People have been asking me for 3 weeks, TJ, it's time to do another ranking. It's time to do another top 32. You know what? I have a top 50 for you. And I even highlighted and underlined teams that are worth talking about and kind of where I want to start. And no matter what I do, no matter what I say, this will be posted directly after the podcast. So save your typing fingers for Twitter. But let's have some dialogue. So that's the top 30. I'm going to let you start, Bepic, with what sticks out to you.
Okay. Winthrop is number 1, Baylor number 2. Honestly, just getting out unscathed of week 1 is fair enough. Might be dropping Maryville a bit too much after one day. Northwood is kind of low. I mean, with Baylor kind of being inconsistent, Northwood a little bit low. Like St. Clair as well, number 4, pretty low for the weekend that they had. I mean, what have St. Clair done to like get dropped below these teams?
Well, for me, I've ever since the beginning of the season, I've had a very clear top 3 that showed out, and that was Winthrop, Baylor, Maryville. I do think that with Winthrop and Maryville, unless they have something horrendous happen to them, they're going to remain in the top 4 at the bare minimum. And then when it comes to Baylor, I don't disagree that they could drop. But at the same time, I think that a lot of our expectations have come at bad times for them. Like the team had to go all the way to Hawaii, and then they had to come back and try and play in CRL. It's a mess. I'm going to get to Twitch chat in a second. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get there.
That's good.
Also, I will say that actually, I'm going to wait for the Indiana Tech comments. I'm going to get down there. With Northwood being low, and KevDog knows this, I have not been high on Northwood ever since it was announced that Creams is leaving. I don't believe that roster is the full version of themselves with Drewy.
What about Qual 1? They beat West Virginia.
And I hear that, but then you're going to look at West Virginia being at 8, and I'm not high on West Virginia either. I don't value that as a championship contending win. I also believe that roster is still missing a mental lead. I think that unfortunately they're on the way out with Hockey being a senior, and we're going to keep a close eye on that one. But in terms of the top 5, St. Clair unfortunately kind of falls in this middle ground of I have a lot of faith in them, but I don't know if they're a title contender once again. I think they're one good upset on one of those teams, or maybe a dominant win over Northwood for them to jump in my rankings. That's my explanation for the top 5. We can keep going.
All right. Cumberland number 7. I like it. I really like it. Cumberland definitely deserve to be up towards the top. Oklahoma Christian and Ball State above Indiana Tech. Indiana Tech, you want to do the comments now? Because, we got a lot of Tech fans in chat.
So I had conversations with the Indiana Tech guys a few times over the weekend about that series where Chippy subbed in. This is my issue, is Indiana Tech go absurdly hot, and then they get to a grand final when the lights are the brightest. And when OC's lights were the brightest in CRL, they crumbled. Unfortunately for Indiana Tech, they didn't crumble. I'm not going to say that because that's not fair. But I didn't see them perform to their ability or close enough to it. And yes, I know OC is at 10, a team who didn't make CRL. And I'm going to say something that people aren't going to want to hear. OC had one bad day. They are still better than the majority of the teams in CRL. And I'm going to stand on that currently today. That's going to be my big point. Now, could Indiana Tech be higher? Could they be 9? Absolutely. Could they be 8? Why not? I'm willing to hear that out. But bar for bar, band for band, experienced this semester in last, I'm not there yet with them, and I am high on OC, especially after they defended what needed to be done in the LAN this weekend. So I know that's going to be a very tough point for people to swallow, but at the same time, it's a DJTJ ranking. There's bound to be a few points where people get upset.
I mean, Oklahoma Christian, like I value LAN victories like that. 10 might still be ambitious considering who they lost to in qual 2, and they did get 4-0'd by Akron Gold as well in NECC. Like, we had that results that happened this past week. So LAN result is good, but I don't know, that a little bit high in my opinion. But hey, I like the takes, dude. Akron Gold at 14, above Akron Blue. You have to at this point. You got the straight head-to-head win in Game 7 in the CECC quals. Syracuse at 17, outside that top 16 range. Is that them and Akron are the two teams, or no? Who was it? Them and Wichita State are the two teams that are outside the top 16 that made league play. So even with Wichita State making it, you still have them at 18.
Yeah, so I'm gonna very briefly say one more thing because everyone's going absurd in Twitch chat.
What do we got?
The rankings between the end of the broadcast and the post on Twitter, they do change a little bit because I like valuing public opinion. So I just want to put that on there for all the people arguing that a lot of you do have good points, but I was given probably a span of like an hour or two where I was trying to go through and do this. So if I make an error, on me. However, I'm going to stand on OC. I'm going to stand on Syracuse. I'm going to stand on Wichita State. Now, in terms of Syracuse and Wichita State, I have Boise and OC in the top 16, even though they did not make league play, because I still believe that they are better than the teams who are right below them. Now, am I a little high on Boise? Could they maybe drop a few spots? I'm willing to hear that out. They could go down a few, but top 16, I'm very confident in. Now, let's talk about Syracuse and Wichita State. Like I said earlier in the show, I have been very low on Wichita State. I have always been low on Wichita State.
Oh,
and unfortunately, even though that they grabbed the win over OC in CRL, I don't know if they're going to win a series in CRL league play. And I'm going to say that today. I think they are, unfortunately, and I'm going to catch flack for this, I'm sure I will. I do believe they are the worst team in CRL league play. And I think that by the day and the way it played out, the fact they got the better of OC, I'm very happy for them, but someone's got to be the 16th seed. I think it's them. Now, for Syracuse, again, a team that you said earlier in the show had a slow start, and there's a lot to be desired. If they go and they smash everyone this weekend in Myrtle Beach, or if they grab a signature win in CRL, great. Tiz made a great point. You go to 5 with Maryville. Great on you guys. I don't want to disvalue that result, but I am somebody, and I've said this many times, I do not value losses. Unfortunately, if you lose, that does not change your perception. Obviously, if you get 3-0 and you get smashed, that's different versus a Game 3, Game 4, Game 5 close series. But I don't value those results. Davenport, if I'm going to be really honest, probably could drop below Syracuse, maybe even Wichita, but they've had recency bias that I'm going to leave them there. And then Akron and Akron Gold, I feel pretty confident as the current gatekeepers of that top 15. I feel pretty good about them there.
Kennesaw State at 19. I mean, they had a rough run. Like 19, maybe a little bit high if you look at some of the losses they've been taking recently. What do you think about that?
I think that's a fair take. And again, there's certain teams that will move before I post on Twitter. Kennesaw is the hardest team to rank in my entire top 20 because they don't care enough all the time. They don't send their full roster. They don't scrim. And me and Dylan had a great conversation about this past weekend. They don't play enough to be valued, I think, this high. But my issue with this part of the rankings is we are about to enter a 10-team swing of teams who have really good wins and really bad losses. And I'm talking about Kennesaw all the way down towards LCU. All of those teams have, in my opinion, pretty rough track records. Maybe except for Columbia, maybe. But even then, they've been on the shakier end. Again, recency bias, been on the shakier end as of late. So I feel about this part. I think Kennesaw could drop. Maybe Columbia could rise. But in terms of the rest, I feel pretty okay about 19 to 29.
I think Columbia is definitely underrated. They actually haven't had any bad losses yet. They beat the teams they were supposed to, and then they did fall short. Pulling up their run as well. They lost to Wichita State, so the team that ended up qualifying in their pool in lowers. And then they had that big win over Fisher. Do what?
They could probably go right below Wichita.
Yeah,
I'm willing to hear that out.
Although the core of Columbia is now 0-3 against Wichita in the last like 6 months or so in competition, so it got a little bit of a curse developing right there. And now, I mean, this is the part of the rankings where it does get weird. Mount Aloysius at 29, above Leslie. Actually, is there precedent for that?
I don't know if they've played each other before, unless I missed a result, because it's very possible I missed a result. But from what, again, got to have a hot take here and there. I feel okay with where Mount Aloysius is. Again, after how highly WCTC talked about this team, and again, when you guys see my top 31 down, it's going to make a little bit more sense. Because of the teams who have climbed from 40 to 30 in my rankings, that's why Mount Aloysius had to be in the top 30, in my opinion. So even if there's a precedent that I missed, I feel pretty okay about them being 29 or 30.
What else? Davenport Red hanging on to top 32. Cleveland State actually in your top 32, even with all their bad losses this semester. Like I wasn't expecting to have to go look at their resume, but like they have lost some pretty rough series in LAN quals.
Which again, I would say the same thing for many of the teams that we're about to talk about in the bottom side of these rankings. I truly do believe that this is a team that I'm high on. This is a team that I may be too personal with. Like, and I say personal, I don't know them personally. I mean, watching their games, watching their results. I am pretty high on Cleveland State. I also think there had to be some gatekeeper teams in the top 32. And as of the way it stands right now, I think Cleveland State and Davenport Red are in a fair spot. But now, once you showcase my top 33, 34, 35, I think a lot of people are going to have opinions about that. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it while you're trying to crop, I think. WCTC, Penn State, and Daytona State are 33, 34, and 35 on my list. I would be willing to have those teams become the new gatekeeper teams in this section. And I'm willing to hear that argument out, especially Penn State. But again, we only have seen Penn State in CRL, and we don't see them in much else. And that's it.
All right, do you want me to show your like 49 through whatever that is? You want me to cut it off 48?
They can be randomized. My 49 through whatever the heck, those teams can be mixed up in my eyes. We can show them just for exposure, don't get me wrong, but I don't have an order for those teams. So I'll just keep moving down the list. I do have Carthage at 37. They fell and have risen pretty heavily in the past. I believe most recently they have fallen in my rankings.
Yeah.
Again, when you're looking at gatekeeper teams of the top 40, I think San Diego State, a really good example of a gatekeeper team. Carthage, I think, is in a spot where, again, some great losses or some great wins, some bad losses. I like them there. And then from 38 all the way down, these are all teams who, if I'm being honest, don't make sense to me. They're teams that should be playing better and should have, like, for example, Fisher Navy should be the best out of these teams. They should be 36 or higher, but they have bad losses. Maryland, a very talented team, but then we lose to Wisconsin randomly. Yeah. Winthrop Academy, haven't gotten to play with their full roster at a LAN except for literally this past weekend. And in the meantime, Phantom's got to do reps with the A team. And then same thing, like Florida, club program, Kennesaw B varsity team who's been incredible in NECC but has struggled outside of that. James Madison, Florida Southern, maybe honorary teams in my eyes. I think it's fair to make that argument. And then I think the only team I didn't mention was Fuel in South Carolina. Those are Division II powerhouses who have performed well in their league play from what I saw. And yes, I am still concerned, but also South Carolina has not gotten to play with AUG over the last 2 weeks or week, I believe, or at least over the last few games I've gotten to watch. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to leave them there. I'm not going to punish them for that just yet. And then York snipes the 48th spot because Texas Dallas, Brock, Albright, Bruton Parker JV, Indiana. Those are all the teams who just missed it in my eyes, who again have really bad losses, but yet they have some really talented wins. If I were to make a hot button topic out of this and just place a team in the top 48, if it wasn't York, I think right now it would have to be Texas Dallas or Bruton Parker JV. And I hate saying that because I actually really like Indiana and Albright as units, and Brock doesn't really get to play in much other than PCL, where we don't get to see them play many high-level teams. So should it be Brock over York? Could be, but I think UTD or UTD or Bruton Parker JV actually have the recency and the consistent games to make that argument. So that was a lot. But we can keep going, but there's a lot of takes and a lot of stuff packed into this list.
I mean, for me, looking at the 36 to 48, like I would have to study the round robin of results across the board there. York being top 48, I mean, they just lost to West Virginia Lotus. Like you can't be losing series like that and not playing anywhere else and still be ranked in my eyes. But it is difficult to give that spot to anybody at this point, because you do have a lot of teams with bad losses. Daytona State and Penn State, I think, are really underrated in your list. I think if you're putting teams like Cleveland State and even Lubbock Christian at this rate, Davenport Red as well, top 32, they have done so much less to prove themselves as being top 32 teams than Daytona State and Penn State. And DSC has some like NECC losses and losses elsewhere that you can look at to drop them, which fair enough. Penn State, I mean, I get they don't play in much, and you might have gone through this. I was reading Twitch chat while you were talking a little bit, so I missed some of the reasoning. But like Penn State, if you're a game away from making league play, I don't think you should be anywhere outside of the top 30.
Which is very fair. And again, I don't publish this list before the podcast. I always wait until after, because as a student, like, guys, let's be very honest here. I have 6 LANs in the next 8 weeks I'm working. I'm on spring break. If you think I care, I upset you, I'm sorry. I love all of you, but I literally, I go through the spots, I make my picks. This is over the years. I've been in the scene now as an analyst for 4 years now. This is what I have created, and if you love it, I'm happy for you, and if you don't love it, don't worry. There will be some changes, and I can go ahead and qual some people's worries. Penn State will rise. That is totally fair. Daytona State could probably jump. Very fair. Indiana Tech could move up a few spots. Don't get me wrong. And I'll even throw Kennesaw could drop a few spots. Columbia could move up a few spots. Those are probably the first changes I'm going to make right after this show. And then you'll see the tweet and we'll go from there. But outside of that, I think this list is actually, and I'm gonna stand on it. I think this is one of my better mixes of analytics and content. I think this is a fair list at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't mind it. And I mean, anyone that watches the podcast regularly knows that we miss stuff all the time, and like there's just too much to keep track of. Like, man, the CRL is so chaotic. I've been feeling so overwhelmed the last like 2 weeks trying to keep up with stuff. Like between work, between being sick for the week and a half that I was, like I felt so overwhelmed with keeping up with CRL and all the leagues and CRL. That's where my head's been at. That's why I don't have a list. Honestly, like it was just too much for me. I've been struggling recently, but we got some accolades to give out to cap this podcast out. I gotta go to the gym, get some of this just sitting for 2 hours energy out. But I didn't do a player of the week this week. I didn't feel like I watched enough Collegiate Rocket League to really give a player of the week out to a player that maybe hasn't already gotten an accolade. I could definitely shout out Bluey, shout out one of the Oklahoma Christian boys, shout out someone that had a good CRL run, but those are just honorable mentions. My big accolade of the week, I gotta give a shout out to Oklahoma Christian. Like they did, as a team, they deserve it. The mental crash out that they had to be going through after the 2 open qualifiers where they go 0-4 in qual matches, only winning 2 games, you had to be at rock bottom mentally. And for a team like Oklahoma Christian that we know can hit that rock bottom in tournament format, formats, for them to bounce back and have the LAN run that they did at Tri-Cities Slam, they deserve some sort of shout out, because that is an insane lower bracket run that they had to go to. I'll put it up on stream one more time just to show here, because this is crazy. Like, Daytona State into Akron Glue with LAN boys, into the hometown team of ETSU, into a team with tons of LAN experience like Bruton Parker, into an Indiana Tech team that just pulled off the upset of the tournament over Concord, and you end up winning on LAN. Like, that's I think a deserved team of the week.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll follow that up with the team that they played. Indiana Tech, by far, one of the most obvious picks in the podcast history for team of the week. For all of the changes they've been making, for the way they've had to play with different rosters, I am superbly impressed with what the school has done in creating a B team out of nowhere. You have to keep in mind that they're fighting in state with Ball State, a team who has been a D1 representation of Collegiate Esports for a long time. And I love BK, but I think it's about dang time that we get another Northern school who's ready to compete. Jake is incredible. Bub is incredible. Chippy is my favorite uncle. Bluey is on the rise. The Europeans are doing their thing. Somber did a great job this weekend. And even though you can say what you're going to say about my power rankings, I have nothing but pure respect for that team. I just need to see a little bit more, but I've seen enough for them to be team of the week.
All right. I mean, I like it. Like, you can't have the series of a big LAN like that, biggest upset, and not be shouted out just a little bit. So, maybe we'll finally get Indiana Tech at #1, like in the power rankings, like all the people want. But maybe the world isn't ready for that.
Who knows? And I'm going to close out with my player of the week. I actually kind of had to scramble because originally I was going to say Bluey because I was overly impressed. I've always seen Bluey as the spearhead of the Indiana Tech roster, but he showed so much poise on defense that I was very impressed. But you already mentioned him, so I'm going to let that slide. So I actually chose Hammy Crackers because with Florida, there is no such thing as consistency. Some weekends they are the best team wherever they show up, and other weekends they sell out at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, and that happens. And they're a club team. They are doing more for the future of club esports and for SEC schools, Big 10, Big 12, huge colleges. They're doing more for that than they are for Collegiate Rocket League in 2026. However, if you watch the Florida games, Hammy Crackers had multiple times where he was in a 2v1 bump situation. He not only came out of those situations victorious every single time, he even got a few counterattack goals off of them. And whenever Florida was struggling, whenever, for example, like Sap plays really fast, whenever Sap went too fast or double commit or whiffed, Hammy was right there to get the clear, to get the save, to get possession. He changed how Florida was able to hold on to their games, and he's easily going to be my player of the week.
All right, shout out. Is he still rank C, Hammy Crackers? I know that was a big thing at DreamHack when he dropped down to rank C, but
who knows? I haven't seen.
Shout out at one point rank C Hammy Crackers. He's repping the rank well. Actually, I've decided on a player of the week actually, and for once I'm gonna give it to like a top team. I think Vesh deserves it for St. Clair. Like watching that Cumberland series live, he looked like an unstoppable force in offense, and that's what St. Clair needs when you're replacing Arju is another guy that can step up and lead the charge. It's such a dynamic team, that Saints roster. I thought they were going to lose a lot of that with losing Arju, but Vesh has slotted in so extremely well, and St. Clair, I mean, they're undefeated so far in league play through 2 series. They've beaten Cumberland 3-0 and they beat Concord 3-0, and so I think with that, Vesh definitely deserves my player of the week. But that does conclude this episode of Collegiate Exclusive. About 2 hours, which I think we had this is a makeup episode. Honestly, had to cover a lot that we didn't get to last week, TJ. So I hope that bed was comfy.
I mean, I am definitely hurting, but it's worth the show.
Well, you can get back to enjoying your spring break. The rest of you, get ready because you got the CRL open this Thursday if you're not already in league play. And if you're already in league play, then you got bigger fish to fry than worrying about the open this weekend. That is a stacked top 16 in CRL. All of you, thank you very much for watching the podcast. Sorry we didn't do an episode last week. That's on me. But we'll be back next week as well, talking about Boost on the Beach, where TJ and I will be this weekend in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, enjoying ourselves at the hangout. It's going to be a good time. Going to be enjoying seeing all of the players there that'll be in attendance that we're good pals with. So make sure you do follow us on Twitter at CRL Exclusive Podcast. Follow the podcast on Spotify as well. I like seeing the numbers rise. We're getting actually some decent views as a Spotify podcast, which is really cool to say. So please follow us there, rate us 5 stars, get us some algorithm points and what have you. But most importantly, go enjoy your Tuesday evenings. That's a peace out from MrBepic and DJTJ. I'll see you all next time. Bye.